Recent podcast, Nadeshot talked about Infinity Warp and the treatment they have towards their competitive player base, the more diehards. And of course, he also talks about Warzone 2 and MW2 and calls out IW for their treatment and catering towards casual players over the more diehard fan base.
Sledgehammer is dropping the hammer on Infinity Ward Treyarch. Okay? What I mean by that, actually, I'm going to keep Treyarch out of this. Really, Infinity Ward. Infinity Ward came in with Warzone 2 and Modern Warfare 2, and they wanted to make a game that was going to stand alone by itself, and they changed a lot of core mechanics of the game that nobody asked to change. They made the game easier for casuals. They tried to encourage camping. They put bubble wrap on all the players. And that's what these studios do. Call of Duty is the same every single year, but then they tune some things or change some things so that their game can stand alone against all the others from the other studios. Be like, this is our Call of Duty, which I get why they do that. Like, if I was a studio head, like, I don't want to do the same exact thing. Well, maybe you shouldn't have got into the business of making Call of Duty. Like, Infinity Ward is not the same company that it was when it started. So you come in the second half and all of a sudden you're trying to cement your own legacy. Like, hey, give us the fucking red dots back, dude. Nobody asked you to change that. Like, a core mechanic of Call of Duty that has existed since the dawn of fucking time. Somebody shoots without a silencer, you fucking see it on your mini-map. Red dot. I would say the mini-map was actually more important than like 90% of the other core mechanics of Call of Duty.
And this has been a frequent debate over the past many months, and I would say title to title, this always happens, but especially as of late with removing things like Deddy and also things like Red Dot, and he also says, which has been a frequent thing, all the freaking attachments. I mean, pretty much any streamer at some point or another throughout the past year has talked about how complicated Call of Duty has become with each and every weapon having unlocks and freaking missions and challenges to unlock 17 different attachments. For someone like me, have not really enjoyed that side of things. Now, obviously, a lot of people, maybe more casuals, do really enjoy that thing. It's always been a weight and balance with Call of Duty that I never think they'll be able to perfect, especially coming from someone like Nadeshot, who also talks about the diehard competitive fan base are the ones that truly love Call of Duty, but unfortunately, they have to cater to the far majority, which has become... It's always been a casual audience. He even says it. It's always been a casual audience.
Some time ago, I think it was like Modern Warfare 2019, they get rid of fucking dead silence as a perk. All of a sudden, I got 30 attachments. I'm building a goddamn Death Star with my Legos, trying to figure out what needs to be on my gun. I'm watching YouTube fucking tutorials. Brother.
You gotta level up other guns to unlock fucking attachments for the gun you want to use.
Oh, you want the extended mag for your MP7? Well, go get 100 headshots with that LMG, you piece of shit. Like, what? Brother, they must have just sat in a conference room and just started throwing darts at pieces of paper on them. And that's how they made decisions. They're basically taking all the things that people loved from like the original Warzone and the core sweaty mechanics from core Call of Duty, and they're bringing it back. Like, this is the best thing that they could ever do.
Yeah.
This is literally, I am shocked that a Call of Duty studio like Sledgehammer, who, you know, took a lot of flack, they've had a lot of changes in leadership as well, but AW, I think, was better than what we remember. They're giving the community everything, at least the hardcore, like, competitive players, giving us everything that we've been asking for.
But it's also what causes him to say that IW or Infinity Ward has said F you to the highly competitive players who continue to play the game day in and day out, and maybe they should be listening to. The problem with Call of Duty, as he has said already, it's always been a casual game, but your real supporters are the ones that have been truly competitive. And if you really love something or some game, you're going to get better at it. And eventually you're no longer going to be a casual. So how do you actually decide who to cater to? The newer generation just getting into Call of Duty, who are the casuals, or the ones who have played it for the last decade and were casuals and slowly became the more competitive players that maybe you should also be listening to? I do not know the answer to this question. I don't think there will ever be a solve for this.
Throughout the lifespan of a game, like Call of Duty is the perfect example. Maybe the only example. The game was made for casual players. But when you make a game that people love, they are going to do everything they can. I mean, it's like pinnacle of human innovation in the Call of Duty community. they will make a game that they love competitive by any means necessary. So even before we had pregame lobbies and all these settings that we can change for search and destroy and hardpoint and capture the flag, we just played what we had and we made it work. So then David Vonderhaar and Treyarch come in, and all of a sudden they start adding a couple layers to the software on the back end so that we can have pregame lobbies, so we can change the timer on the bomb, so we can have competitive, a basketball court for us to go play on. And the game just get more and more competitive. And Call of Duty and Infinity Ward made the decision that we were the ones, our passion, our unbreakable will to compete on this game that we love was actually making the game worse. When clearly that is absolutely not the case. If you're a casual player, I would see people complain about it all the time, like the slide canceling and instant reloads and the movement. This shouldn't be possible. But guess what? It made people want to play it every single day because they can see incremental improvement every single time they log on. And that's a good thing. That fosters longevity with your game. That fosters a community that actually cares about your game.
Yeah.
And Infinity Ward looked at the Call of Duty community who cares more about this game than anybody and said, fuck you. They did.
Yeah.
Which, brother, I've talked about this a million times on this podcast, but I'll say it one last time. I understand if you're in each other's shoes why they did the things that they don't want to be held hostage by a small portion of the community. But guess what? Like the top 1% are usually the people you need to talk about that are playing your game to make informed decisions about how to make the game better.
Yeah, Nadeshot saying that Infinity Ward said F you to all the players. I don't know. It comes down, for me, I never really looked at the studios and the devs as a big indicator of what Call of Duty I would like. I haven't liked the last few, but I do hope he's right in the fact that maybe Sledgehammer will actually listen to the player base and the more hardcore players and hopefully attune that more, and maybe casuals will like some of those recommendations. But it just seems like every single year Call of Duty has this issue where no matter who backs the studio, we're going to see complaints. Whoever the dev or the studio is, we're going to see the frequent complaints. Maybe it was a bit more brash this past year, and maybe hopefully for MW3, another, just tack on an I or a 1 at the end of each game. We'll just repeat, reuse, recycle, dude. We'll see. It's hard to have hope each and every year when it comes to Call of Duty titles, but still we cross our fingers and we pay the $60 or $70. And that's just where I come from. I'm sure a lot of you guys watching still love Call of Duties, and obviously there's a reason why it's a multi-billion-dollar franchise that survives to this day. And very lastly, a clip I won't play for you guys, Nadeshot talks about the difficulties of fielding a Call of Duty roster year in and year out when the game changes so drastically year in and year out, depending upon which studio is backing it. It's very hard. You can have some players who are world champions in one game, and then because of a different studio for another game, your championship roster is no longer near as good, and you just have to recycle as the game does as well. It's got to be extremely difficult, but it's also got to be very hard for Call of Duty to figure out who to cater to. Seems they're still doing a good job because of how much money they're making, but I don't think a lot of the diehard fans have been very happy the last few years. What do you guys think about this? Nadeshot excited for MW3, and we'll see if it's any different from MW2. Till next time, take care. Okay, bye.